Hello students, in this video we are going to discuss some objective questions of locomotion and movement. So the first topic in this chapter is muscles. So let's discuss some objective questions related to the topic muscles. And the first question is, sarcolemma is a membrane found over in, we have four options. Number 1, nerve fiber. Number 2, cardiac muscles. Number 3, skeletal muscle fiber. Number 4, heart. Now what is sarcolemma? Sarcolemma, it is a specialized cell membrane which surrounds the muscle fiber, and sometimes it is also known as the myolemma. So the answer is option number 3, skeleton muscle fiber. Next is question number 2. When there is a drop in the force of a contraction after prolonged stimulation, it is known as number 1, muscle tone, number 2, muscle atrophy, number 3, muscle fatigue, and number 4, muscle dystrophy. Muscle tone, it is also known as muscle tension. It assists in maintaining the good body posture, whereas muscle atrophy, it is a loss of a muscle tissue which is caused by the lack of physical activity. And muscle fatigue, it is a decline in ability of muscles to generate force. And at last, muscle dystrophy, it is a group of an inherited disease that damage or weakens our muscles over the time. So the answer is option number 3, muscle fatigue. Next is question number 3. The sliding filament theory to explain the muscular contraction was given by number 1, Corti, number 2, H. E. Huxley, number 3, A. F. Huxley, and number 4, Huxley and Huxley. And the answer is option number 4, Huxley and Huxley. Both H. E. and A. F. Huxley explained the sliding filament theory in 1954. This theory is basically proposed to explain the process of a muscle contraction. Next is question number 4. The contraction of muscle of shorter duration is seen in number 1, heart, number 2, jaws, number 3, intestine, and number 4, eyelids. For shorter duration, it is obviously seen in eye. So the answer is option number 4, eyelids. Next is question number 5. Name the connective tissue sheath which surrounds the muscle bundles. Number 1, epimysium, number 2, endomysium, number 3, perimysium, and number 4, sarcomere. Epimysium, it is the outermost layer of the connective tissue encircling the whole muscle, whereas endomysium surrounds the individual muscle fiber and perimysium surrounds each fascicle, and sarcomere, it is the functional unit of straightened muscle. It represents the unit between the two Z lines. So the answer is option number 1, epimysium. Next is question number 6. What is sprain? Number 1, more pulling of an tendon. Number 2, less pulling of an tendon. Number 3, more pulling of a ligament. And number 4, less pulling of a ligament. Sprain is basically twisting of a ligament of ankle, wrist, and other joints, which basically cause pain and swelling, but not dislocation. So the answer is option number 3, more pulling of ligament. And tendons are basically flexible. Next is question number 7. Muscles are red because of presence of number 1, myoglobin and mitochondria. Number 2, hemoglobin and Golgi bodies. Number 3, globulin and mitochondria. Number 4, protein and lysosome. And the answer is option number 1, myoglobin and mitochondria. Myoglobin provide oxygen to the mitochondria, which in turn generates ATP. And also myoglobin is present in muscle tissue. So the option number 1 is the right answer. Next, question number 8. The functional unit of contractile system in the striped muscle is number 1, Z band, number 2, A band, number 3, myofibril, number 4, sarcomere. We already discussed this thing. The functional unit between the two Z line is sarcomere. So the answer is option number 4, sarcomere. Next is question number 9. The total number of muscles in the body of man is number 1, 409, number 2, 439, number 3, 539, number 4, 639. And the answer is option number 4, 639. Next is question number 10. Muscles of the heart are number 1, voluntary straighten, number 2, voluntary smooth, number 3, involuntary straighten, and number 4, involuntary smooth. And the answer is option number 3, involuntary straightened, which are not under control. Next is question number 11. Contraction of a muscle is caused by number 1, myosin, number 2, actin, number 3, ATP, and number 4, actomyosin. So the answer is option number 4, actomyosin. Next is question number 12. The dark bands, A bands of a skeleton muscles are known as number 1, isotropic bands, number 2, anisotropic bands, number 3, intercalated disc, and number 4, cross bridge. There are basically two bands, A band and I band. A band are also known as dark bands and anisotropic band, whereas I band is called light band and known as isotropic band. So here the answer is option number 2, anisotropic bands. Next is question number 13. Ciliary muscles are found in number 1, diaphragm of mammal, number 2, eyes of vertebrates, number 3, heart of vertebrates, number 4, stomach of frog. Ciliary muscles are related to the eyes, so the answer is option number 2, eyes of vertebrates. Next is question number 14. Heartbeat is controlled by a nodal tissue which is made up of a specialized cardiac muscles called number 1, Purkinje fiber, number 2, myonemes, number 3, collagen fiber, number 4, telodendria. And the answer is option number 1, Purkinje fibers. These are the network of fibers which is located in the inner ventricular wall of an heart, which receives the conductive signal. So the option number 1 is the right answer. Next is question number 15. Papillary muscles are found in number 1, hemocoel, number 2, heart of an cockroach, number 3, arm, and number 4, heart of an mammal. And the answer is option number 4, heart of the mammal. Papillary muscles are located in the ventricle of an heart and also known as mitral and tricuspid wall in mammal. Next is question number 16. During the muscle contraction, number 1, chemical energy is changed into electrical energy. Number 2, chemical energy is changed into mechanical energy. Number 3, chemical energy is changed into physical energy. And number 4, mechanical energy is changed into chemical energy. And the answer is option number 2, chemical energy is changed into the mechanical energy. Next is question number 17. Major protein in the thick filament of the skeleton muscle fiber is number 1, tropomyosin, number 2, myosin, number 3, actin, and number 4, troponin. And the answer is option number 2, myosin. Thick filament composed of an myosin, whereas thin filament composed of an actin. So option number 2 is the right answer. Next is question number 18. Flexion of thighs, knees, and rotation is facilitated by number 1, biceps muscle, number 2, triceps muscle, number 3, sartorius muscle, and number 4, shank. And the answer is option number 3, sartorius muscle. Sartorius muscles, these are the longest muscles in the entire human body. It is basically present in the thigh and it is also known as running muscles. So option number 3, sartorius muscle, is the right answer. Next is question number 19. The time period between the beginning of an electrical response and peak of tension recorded is number 1, contraction time, number 2, latent period, number 3, refractory period, and number 4, relaxation time. And the answer is option number 1, contraction time. Next is question number 20. The special contractile protein actin is found in number 1, thick filament of A band, number 2, thin filament of I band, number 3, both thick and thin band, and number 4, whole of myofibril. And the answer is option number 2, thin filament of I bands, thin composed of an actin and thick composed of an myonin. Next is question number 21. During the muscular contraction, the option number 1, I zone will decrease in length, number 2, A zone will decrease in length, number 3, Z zone will decrease in length, and number 4, H zone will decrease in length. And the answer is option number 1, Z zone will decrease in the length, I zone will decrease in the length, rest will not. Next is question number 22. Action potential is a muscle fiber is number 1 minus 90 millivolt, number 2 minus 80 millivolt, number 3 45 to 50 millivolt, and number 4 90 millivolt. And the answer is option number 3, 45 to 50 millivolt. Action potential is between 45 to 50. So option number 3 is the right answer. Next is question number 23. The term refractory period with reference of a muscle tissue refers to number 1, a period when stimulation does not lead to contraction. Number 2, a period when maximum contraction occur. Number 3, time gap between the application of a stimulus and occurrence of a contraction. Number 4, loss of translucency in the muscle fiber due to the death of animal. And the answer is option number 1, a period when stimulation does not lead to the contraction. Next is question number 24. The muscular contraction in which the tension remains the same and the mechanical work is also done is called isotonic contraction. Number 2, tetanus. Number 3, isomeric contraction. And number 4, single muscle twinge. Isomeric contraction, these are those contractions in which length will remain the same, and isotonic are those in which tension remains same but length will change. So the answer is option number 1, isotonic contraction. Next is question number 25. Straightened muscles contract by number 1, sliding of actin filament upon myosin filament. Number 2, sliding of myosin filament upon actin filament. Number 3, pulling together of a myosin filament. And number 4, pulling together of an actin filament. And the answer is option number 1, sliding of actin filament upon the myosin filament. Next is question number 26. The distance or the length of the myofibril between the two adjacent Z line is called number 1, sarcomere, number 2, sarcolemma, number 3, fibril, and number 4, sarcoplasm. We already discussed this thing, and the answer is option number 1, sarcomere. Next is question number 27. In a relaxed fibril, H zone, a lighter region of low density can be seen in the center of number 1, anisotropic or A band, number 2, isotropic or I band, number 3, Z band, and number 4, both in A and I band. And the answer is option number 1, anisotropic and A band. Next is question number 28. The dark band in a myofibril are due to overlapping of number 1, only thick bands, number 2, only thin bands, number 3, both thick and thin bands, number 4, none of above. And the answer is option number 3, both thick and thin band. Overlapping is because of both thick and thin bands. Next is question number 29. A dash muscles rotate the forearm to turn the palm downward. Number 1, pronator. Number 2, supinator. Number 3, adductor. Number 4, abductor. Pronators and supinators, these are the two muscles which are present in the forearm, which basically help to turn the palm downward and upward. The pronator help in turning the palm downward, whereas supinator help in turning the palm upward. Whereas adductor and abductor, these are the two muscles which are present in the hip region. So the answer is option number 1, pronator. Next is question number 30. Which one of the following take place in the myofibril when skeleton muscles contract? Number 1, when light band and dark band and H zone, all three are shortened. Number 2, when H band is shortened and dark band and H zone remains unchanged. Number 3, when light band shortens, dark bands unchanged and H zone disappear. Number 4, when light band unchanged and dark band and H zone become shortened. And the answer is option number 3, when light band shorten, dark band unchanged and H zone disappear. Next is question number 31. When we lift a heavy object, number 1, triceps contract but biceps relax. Number 2, biceps contract and triceps relaxed. Number 3, both biceps and triceps contract. And number 4, both biceps and triceps relaxed. And the answer is option number 2, biceps contract and triceps relaxed. Next is question number 32. An all-out sprint cannot continue for more than 40 seconds because number 1, run out of oxygen. Number 2, accumulation of creatine. Number 3, muscles collapse. Number 4, all of these. And the answer is option number 4, all of these. Next is question number 33. Ions that must be present for binding the crossed bridge is number 1, sodium ion. Number 2, calcium ion. Number 3, potassium ion. And number 4, none of these. We know the calcium ions are important in sliding filament and of course binding the cross bridge. So the answer is option number 2, calcium ion. Next is question number 34. Match the column. Column 1. A is longest smooth muscles. Number 2, strongest muscles. Number 3, smallest muscles. And number 4, largest muscles. Longest smooth muscles are the uterus muscles. So A matched with the second, and B strongest muscles